Hello, hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy Future Friday. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you all to Future Friday. My name is James Darius Ball. I have the honor of being the Director of Future Cities at the National Building Museum. We are broadcasting to you live from the Great Hall at the National Building Museum. For those of you that haven't been here, I'm going to step to the side just for a moment so you can see our absolutely grandiose place. We, in fact, are hosting a cherry blossom run today downstairs. So it's an exciting day at the museum, and we're so grateful to have you all joining us. I have to give a quick shout out. Future Fridays is a part of the Future Cities Initiative. We couldn't be here without our sponsors, AARP, Rooted Communities, and many more that are coming on as we launch this multi-year initiative. I got to start off with a quick story, and then I'm going to introduce our executive director to give you an official welcome before we get into the content of the day. We really believe at the National Building Museum that stories are powerful. They shape our imagination and, in fact, really give our future its form. So this story of future cities, of course, is rooted here in our nation's capital at the National Building Museum, and it's a story that we want you all to be a part of. This event today is kicking off a multi-month series. The first Friday of every month, we are going to host a conversation that we want you all to share your ideas and bring your voice to this conversation. So this is the first time we've launched this style of an initiative. It's exciting because it's bringing all the different things that we do at the museum to this singular focus. It means we can have a greater reach and create more value. And that's because you all are a part of it. So that is my deepest gratitude again for joining us today. I want to give you all a chance to introduce yourselves. As you will see, you're being invited to Slido. Some of you may have used that before, some not. But if you click open on that, you will see that you get this slide that offers a place to enter a question. Well, we're breaking all the rules here today. We're not answering questions. We're going to put in your contact information as you like. Now, I do want to note that this is a public forum. We do plan to record both the video as well as the chat. So please only put in the information about yourself that you want to share with everyone. But if you'd like to put in your name, your title, your organization, perhaps you'd like to share an ask, something that you're looking for right now, or an offer, something that you have that you want to put out to the rest of the attendees that have joined us. As we're orienting to Slido, I'll quickly say you can upvote the additions that are made and you can reply. So if somebody puts out their name and information with an ask that you can help with, feel free to reply to that post and get a conversation started in Slido. So while you all are doing your hellos, it is my distinct pleasure to get to introduce Eileen Fuchs, the President and Executive Director of the National Building Museum, to offer a brief welcome to all of you today. Over to Eileen.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Can you hear me? Yes, great. Awesome. Hi. Well, I am not coming to you from the wonder of the Great Hall. I'm coming to you from the wonder of my home office. Pretty sad, but I'm Eileen Fuchs. I'm the President, Executive Director of the National Building Museum. So thrilled to welcome you to the first online program of our Future Cities Initiative. So welcome to Future Fridays and TGIF, everybody. Am I right? It's the longest week in the world. Through our initiative, the museum is really elevating the future of American urban life as a core focus of who we are and what we do. So the multi-year effort it's really, truly exciting for us. We're so glad to have you join us as we explore the critical challenges facing cities today. And at the museum, we're committed to bringing a voice of optimism to these challenges. So that through collaboration and innovation, we believe we can create solutions that will help us build cities that everyone can be proud of. So I'm keeping my remarks super brief. I know we have a full agenda with meaningful conversations, lots of insights, but I just really want to encourage you to stay engaged with us throughout this initiative. This is designed to be inclusive and bold and exciting and iterative, and that brings many, many voices together that will ultimately reach the American public. We're estimating 2.5 million people through our powerful storytelling platforms. It's all about great storytelling, and we need great data and great voices and great people to tell those great stories. So that's it. Let's have a great conversation today. Looking forward to it. Back to you, James.
Thank you, Eileen. Fantastic. So it is my honor to now introduce our other speakers that we have brought together for you. What you will see is that we brought together industry with government, with academia to really give you a well-rounded perspective on this topic. Um, the problem is they have so many accolades, awards, degrees, and experience that this would take the entire session to announce. So I'm going to rattle off some quick bios for you of who we have joining us, and then we're going to get straight into our dose of optimism. So first up is Dr. Bo Bernhard, who began his research at Harvard University as an undergraduate, double majored psychology and sociology, magna cum laude on the socio-economic impacts of the Las Vegas Strip. He was also captaining the baseball team. It received player awards, garnered academic all Ivy League honors in the classroom. And this was all before he was 30. So his bio goes on and on. And Bo, again, if you don't mind, I just had to tee up the beginnings of all the incredible work you've done. And we're looking forward to hearing more about your thoughts on the fun economy soon. Then we have Rebecca Rocky, the Deputy Chief Economist and Global Head of Forecasting at Cushman and Wakefield. Her focus spans economics, demographics, financial markets, commercial real estate at macro and micro levels, and she manages the production of national metro level commercial real estate forecasts for many property types across the Americas. And again, has spoken, has provided white papers, webinars, media requests, presentations, supporting us in understanding all these incredible topics she's researching and writing on. So thank you, Rebecca, for joining. And finally, we have Joshua Franzel, who throughout his career has collaborated with a wide range of governments, associations, foundations, private sector firms. He is currently the Senior Executive and Director of Research and Data Analysis at the National League of Cities. Priorly, he has been with many other organizations. And again, I just want to keep this all super brief. I will throw out the International Trade Administration and the White House Office of Management and Budget among his many accolades. So again, thank you all so much for bringing your expertise to this conversation. And to everybody I still see introducing themselves in the chat, after our dose of optimism, you are all going to get your chance to share your thoughts and ideas on this topic as well. So stay engaged. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Bo Bernhard for our dose of optimism.
Thank you, James. And it feels like we need this week, do we not? It's been a not so optimistic week, but I'm going to speak to some issues that I hope are bigger, more macro, more lasting, more enduring than the sort of challenges of the day. I'll start by talking about how this came about. This is a TED Talk that I think James had heard and suggested I bring to this audience, which I'm thrilled to do. I've spent my whole life looking at sort of Las Vegas and the exportation of what we call the fun economy and the way in which that's growing worldwide. And I think there's some real good news stories embedded here that I'll share with you. I'll start by saying that in 2019, this most incredible thing happened that I feel like nobody paid attention to. And it actually was a moment we should have celebrated. In 2019, for the first time in human history, travel and tourism reached 10% of the planet's economy, of all the GDPs added all together. 10% of the world's economy, 1 in 10 pesos, dollars, yen spent on planet Earth in 2019 was spent by a tourist, which is an amazing thing because for the vast majority of human history, of course, that number was zero. For most of our ancestors' lives, they didn't go anywhere, right? They were born on one plot of Earth. They grew up on that plot of Earth. They went to a little schoolhouse on that plot of Earth, maybe. They married on that plot of Earth. They tilled that very same Earth for work. And then they died on that Earth, and then they returned to that Earth in a burial, most likely, right? That's the story of most of human history. And if you believe, as Mark Twain did, that travel is fatal to ignorance and prejudice, that actually is a really happy sociological story, that we've grown as human beings, as travelers, meeting, coming across more kinds of lives, more kinds of stories than our ancestors ever were able to do. I think that's a pretty happy tale. Well, when you add two industries that have blended recently in Las Vegas in entirely new ways, the entire global sports industry, which Las Vegas has sort of become a very interesting and unlikely sports capital in the last 5 years. When you add sports to that mix, the global sports industry, and then you add on top of that the global entertainment industry and everything from Netflix to craps tables, we believe that you reach 14% of the world's economy. So again, this is an industry that is massive when you think of what we call the fun economy, travel, tourism, plus sports, plus entertainment. It's no longer dismissible as just fun. Fun suddenly is very, very serious when you think about the size and scope of the thing. Now, one of the questions I always ask audiences is, do we think that we've actually reached the peak of that figure, whatever that figure may be today? Do we think that today is sort of the ultimate quintessential final peak of those economies, or do we think it's headed higher? And most folks tend to believe it's going up. It's not going down. We've not seen the heyday, and we're now returning back to a period where that's no longer the case. Incidentally, that 10% number I cited in 2019, you might wonder what happened during COVID. Of course, that number sunk to near zero, but we're back. Actually, we've exceeded the 2019 number now to the point where it's grown beyond even our pre-pandemic peak. So is it going up or is it going down? I think most of us would guess it's going up. I think it's going up globally for another very happy reason that nobody's talking about. So, did you know that we live in the first period in human history where more than 50% of the citizens on planet Earth are middle class or above? Again, contrast this, think vast, think macro, think historical. For the vast majority of human history, that was not the case. Most of us were very, very poor by the objective standards that we use to measure these kinds of things. But according to a Brookings analysis, and now that we've seen a lot of interesting work come out of the private sector too, looking at this, we now live in the first period in human history where 50% of us are middle class or above. And when you think about that leap, 35 million people made the leap in India last year from poverty up into the middle class. 30 million people did so in China, but tens of millions did so in countries like Mexico and Kenya. Kenya on the back of the smartphone and the way that that allows transactions to take place in entirely new ways that haven't been solved by other folks looking to grow cities and economies, haven't been able to figure out. The smartphone has sort of figured it out in a way. Mexico is just this amazing country with a remarkable middle class that's largely unseen by certainly American audiences, right? So it's happening all over the world. And as these massive populations jump from poverty up into the middle class, they've gone from a world where they can only really buy things like necessities, right? Diapers and toothpaste and the things that you need. That's what you buy when you're impoverished. When you make the leap up into the middle class, what do you start to buy? You start to buy trips. You start to buy concerts. You start to buy ball games. And you start to buy experiences that wrap all three of those things together. And I don't think there's any other way for this fun economy to head other than up when you take into consideration the massive global expanding balloon that is the massive global expanding middle class. Again, here in America, we often miss out on this because you hear a lot about the perils and difficulties of the middle class. Both of those things can be true, right? The middle class can be in dire straits in the United States, while it's also growing massively globally, right? We all can hold those two thoughts in our heads at the same time. And given that trend does not seem to be slowing up, and in fact, the predictions now are that we probably will hit 2/3 of planet Earth or middle class or above by 2030. You start to think that maybe, just maybe, we should think of this crazy decade as the new roaring 20s, right? Given that massive global growth in a middle class. Now, this is, I think, undeniably a happy story, right? For the vast majority of human history, most of us were very, very poor. And most of us now have a buying power in our day-to-day lives on planet Earth that vastly exceeds human history. Again, we hear a lot of stories in America about not living up to the standards of our parents for the first time, and all of those things can be true and real, while also recognizing the mass victory worldwide. But there's also a question that I conclude the TED Talk, and I'll conclude this talk with. that is, I think, also an important one, which is this healthy or is this good, right? Is the pursuit of fun, right, a noble one? And I'm an academic, so I'm allowed to ask these sort of quasi phony profundities, like, is fun good, right? I mean, when you think about it, not all fun activities are things that we would hold in high esteem. Cocaine is fun, I'm told, and clearly we would not embark on, I don't know, a massive policy movement to create more cocaine moments, right? Not something that I think most of us would endorse. So clearly there are downsides to fun. One of the ones that I study and study very closely is when you drop a casino into a new community, what will happen to gambling addiction, right? That's a very real, very adverse impact of the fun economy, right? But when you think about the ways in which the happiness literature has grown in the last 25 years, the famous sort of starting point, not that we had never studied happiness before, but Martin Seligman, who was famous for studying learned helplessness and how depressing a concept that was, right? How we learn helplessness and then we just continue down this helpless path. He got up as president of the APA, all the psychologists in the country, and said, we've done a great job here in psychology of studying the hurting, of studying the people who are suffering, struggling with depression, struggling with things like schizophrenia, anxiety. I mean, these are painful existences. Good for us, right? For devoting the entire history of psychology to these fields, right? But we've spent almost no time, if there's then a bell curve, on the other tail, on the people who are just killing it, as my students might say, who are crushing it, who are happy, who are thriving, who are flourishing. Maybe, just maybe, the folks who are on that tail will help us learn about the people who are suffering, and we'll be able to help them better by virtue of studying them. But there's just not a literature on this, right? Well, hence the science of happiness was launched. The field of economics has looked at this a lot as well. And one of the consistent findings that we have now over 25 years is that your grandmother was wrong. She was wrong in a sense. If your grandmother was one of those people who told you money can't buy happiness, she was right and she was wrong. What she probably meant was something that we've all internalized and probably understand, is that money can't buy happiness when you buy stuff, when you buy things, right? And in fact, it works in the opposite direction. In fact, when you look at buying stuff, it actually is like buying a big box of candy and eating it on the way home. You actually have a sugar high when you buy a thing, a nice bracelet or even a nice car. And you have a sugar high, right? But after you down a whole bunch of chocolates, what's coming next? Sugar low, right? A crash. And buying stuff, it turns out, is fairly similar. When you buy a thing, you have a spike in happiness followed by a crash, a sugar low, if you will. And the net result ends up over time, especially, there's a cumulative effect of you end up sadder than your baseline, than where you started when you start to buy lots and lots of stuff. So your grandma's right. You can't be happy when you buy stuff. But money can buy happiness when you buy experiences. When you buy experiences. And the industry that sells experiences, or the industries, are in the fun economy. So maybe, just maybe, overall, there's reason in the spirit of the day for optimism. You hear a lot of complaints about kids these days. I work on a college campus with 33,000 of them walking outside of my window here today. And we hear a lot of complaints about how they're just buried in their video games on their phones. I actually think we're in great hands as they take over. Because you know what they buy? They put off buying a whole lot of stuff, including houses, as we know. They value buying experience. And maybe we can learn from them in a way that's different from the dismissiveness with which we often treat the young. Maybe they're wiser than we are, and maybe they get this in a way that's now backed by science. So I like to tell them, right, if you want to be happy, buy in the fun economy. Don't buy things, don't buy stuff, buy experiences. If you want to support the fun economy, go to work in one of these lines of work, right? These are industries that typically, if you told your parents you were going into video game design, right, you'd probably get stigmatized and told not to, right? Well, the fun economy is growing and maybe, just maybe, not hurting the world in the way that older generations anticipated. So maybe, just maybe, If you want to make the world a happier place, grow the fun economy. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. You can track it down online. So thank you, James, for the
Wow.
opportunity to share that particular story from my nerdy academic research perspective.
Dr. Bernard, thank you so much. I do love that story, and I think it's because it's personal. We can resonate with that. I, of course, resonate with that, and we're going to have again a chance for all of our attendees to share their experience economy kind of stories. But I do want to just open up now to some questions, and if I could ask Rebecca and Josh to come off mute as well, because I'd love to just hear your kind of input as the audience kind of gives their questions. I'm going to ask my buddy Cullen in headquarters to clear the Q&A right now in Slido. That'll create a fresh slate for these new questions to come in around the fun and experience economy. And I think that my question is that you bring this human psychology perspective on this. You're looking at the broad population shifts of it, and from a city lens, from a kind of urban lens, this difference between I bought a product and I had an experience, I think, I would expect, has a very different relationship to our space and
Absolutely.
place, right? Because these
Yeah.
experiences are often based in that way. So I'm wondering, and again, I welcome maybe perhaps Dr. Bernhard, we can start with you and then pass it along to just think about this relationship of the fun economy and experience economy when we think about it from that city lens.
Yeah. I would just say, and I'm looking forward to hearing, there's some real experts in the room. But when you think about cities, the vast majority of large cities that we can think of are cities where you made stuff, and then typically you were close to water, and then you would ship the stuff, right? You were in the stuff economy, right? You think about obviously Rust Belt cities and cities like St. Louis, where stuff was made, and then by gosh, we put it on the water and we shipped it places. Las Vegas is one of the first post-industrial cities. This is a place that doesn't make anything, right? It makes experience if it makes anything. And for a long time, that was thought of as a really less than stable foundation for a city of now nearly 3 million people. In fact, our metropolitan statistical area in Las Vegas is about 3 million. So it's not a small city by any stretch. That is built entirely on a post-industrial foundation that makes it look quite different from the St. Louis's of the world. And again, that's true globally too, right? Where so many cities, of course, were about making things rather than making experiences in what's become, I think, a vibrant, fun economy.
Yeah, I think there's a design perspective on that as well of like how does that shape the size of cities. But Josh, can I bring you into this when you think about this? And I think there's a question in the chat here as well, thinking about this from like a government perspective. What does this style of the economy mean? The question there is especially about capturing that at the tax base, but I welcome you to kind of just help us think about this from that municipal perspective.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. And as I was listening to Bo talk, the three layers sort of came to mind. One is when we're seeing when we engage with our members about some of these issues, oftentimes it's how well or not do they have a pulse on what their residents want. And when it comes to the fun economy and making sure that they have a good read on what their both long and short term residents are long tenured and short tenured residents are looking for. A second layer would be how are they baking it into sort of their visioning plans and their strategic plans in terms of ensuring that all the different components of the city that are both public and private are working together to get down the field in terms of developing the infrastructure needed for a high quality fun economy. And I guess the third piece is something that's very important that we often don't think about. What are the foundational services and programs that are needed to support the fun economy, from water and sewer to roads to access to perhaps airports or train stations that enable folks to flow in and flow out of the local area so they can enjoy the fun economy and engage with the fun economy. Those are a couple of things that I think immediately come to mind.
Yeah, I love that. And what comes up for me is Bo, you set us up with this kind of coming from poverty into the middle class. And I think, Joshua, part of what you're talking about is like, we can't go have fun downtown if we can't get there. Like there's a maybe it's the hierarchy of needs, right? There's some basic infrastructure we need to enable that fun economy, experience economy to happen. So that's great. Rebecca, can I bring you in as well? And your perspective on this from the industry side?
Sure. Yeah, just in reaction to Josh's comment, I recommend you watch the documentary about Fire Festival on Netflix if you want to see the importance of infrastructure to create a fun experience. So I have a few thoughts that might be a little meandering, but as I was listening to Bo talk, a distinction that I wanted to make with this audience was that, we tend in the built environment to associate things with experience and fun with what we would call play real estate. So live, work, play is a moniker that we often use in commercial real estate. In that category, we would include things like retail real estate or hotel real estate, hospitality, which obviously serves tourism. But it also includes things like stadiums, arenas, museums, theaters, all of those kinds of institutions which live especially in the hearts of our cities. And I think there are kind of a few things that we should keep in mind. One is that particular part of the built environment is very important. In fact, our estimates are that the experience economy at large, which is a little bit of a distinction with fun, but experience and fun can overlap in many ways. It's about a quarter of all jobs in the US, which is quite significant, and it's growing to Bo's point. So we want to think about that, because where do we generate growth moving forward? Totally agree. We're going to have a lot more coming from the fun, the experience economy, and play real estate is really critical in facilitating that. The other thing I want to plug here, though, is that experience is actually very difficult to measure. We can go into tourism, very direct industry, and look at the GDP that's created there. We can look at, maybe other categories, but it's actually very difficult to quantify experience. If I go into a flagship store that a certain retailer has, and I get to have some kind of moment or curated experience that we now see more and more retailers invoking in their stores, how do you measure that? And so I would actually argue that experience is permeating all segments of the built environment. It's most obvious in play real estate, but it's actually happening in the office environment. What makes people want to come to work, right? It's definitely not the commute. And the more experience and amenitization that you can add to that particular experience of coming to work, the more successful you are at actually getting somebody to leave their home to come to the office. It's also happening within the live environment. How do multifamily landlords create an experience that maximizes retention in their assets? Well, it's not by leaving their residents unattended. It's not by not curating different experiences, because we know the number one thing that causes a renter to want to remain in their community is actually their ability to socialize, connect, and have experiences with other residents in their community. So I just want to argue and throw it out there that experience is everywhere. It's just so difficult to measure.
That is so well said, and there's a seed of a thought in there that I'm going to pull out, which is experiences also create community, and I think that is, again, these kind of outsized value, right? Not just economic. We're going to talk about what does it mean to be a great economy, but that starts to bring in this question of our values and this kind of this understanding that social connection comes into that, and to the point of hard to measure. Certainly that's a tough one. Fantastic. I want to thank Dr. Bernhardt again for setting this off on the right track. I know you have to jump to some other things, but appreciate you joining us. And for everyone else, we are moving now into our Ideas Cast, the second half of our show together. And this is really where we wanted to make sure that all the attendees today can truly be participants in this. So you're already using Slido really well there. Continue to lean in on that. And as you see people posting their own ideas, just a reminder, you can upvote ideas that you think are particularly valuable and insightful, and you can reply to that. So we want to really welcome you to have a robust dialogue and conversation through Slido as you're getting to know each other and sharing your own opinions, while I will also be asking questions and facilitating that with our experts. So I'll be pulling in some of your ideas from Slido, so please stay active in the chat as we get into this next series of questions. So without further ado, we want to make this a fun time together and an easy warm-up. So if we could clear the questions in Slido again, we will just refresh after each one. The first question to answer there is, what is your favorite city experience? So again, I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues here. I'm going to go for the super obvious one, coming down to a museum. Right, clearly, arts and culture fuels my soul. I know that. Seeing live performances, particularly for me, has got to be my favorite city experience. Getting a bit of that connection to the community through art and culture. Josh, can I ask you, what is your favorite city experience as people share those in Slido?
Sure. I think nothing beats a good old-fashioned baseball game. I think even if your team is good, that's great. If your team is not so good, that's fine too. It's an experience that can be multi-generational, from if you have little kids all the way through bringing grandma and grandpa along. But it's not just the game. It's if your city's developed an infrastructure around the baseball stadium, be it major league or minor league, the restaurants, the music venues, the other activities that go along with the game, I think that's one of my favorite city experiences.
Fantastic. How about you, Rebecca?
A few things. I particularly love to be able to walk everywhere I'm going. Once I'm, visiting a city, and particularly maybe they're downtown where a lot of these amenities might exist, and just sort of finding surprises, whether that is the restaurant you've never heard of, and just stop in and try great food. I love being able, or cocktail bar similarly, maybe. But my personal favorite experience is going to Promenade Theater. So I would put theater up there. Promenade Theater is just a little bit different, a little rarer, which is where you actually walk around the theater venue and experience the show sort of amongst the cast members.
That's great, and I'm seeing a lot of chat in Slido about that walking ability and some of the spontaneity that it creates. So I love the idea that it's not just an experience of what I'm going to, the experience of how you get there and the way that things might happen that aren't planned can happen in cities. I think there is something truly unique about cities in that regard. I got to give a shout out to the High Line, Jeffrey Williams in the chat there. I was walking the High Line yesterday up in New York City for the Smart City Expo. So yeah, I love the holistic thinking of that. It's not just the driver that gets you there, it's the way that you can experience that in cities that's truly special. Great. So we're going to clear the chat again, and we're going to move right along here. So this is, again, as at a museum, we really want to be doing this reimagining the future of cities. And so this question is really, what does a city with a great economy look like? Now, we chose the adjective great, so I welcome you to interpret that, and perhaps even your comments in Slido might be around what that great means. You're welcome to answer this question more broadly, or perhaps there's a specific view, a scene, an anecdote. In other words, I welcome you to answer this question of a description, this visioning exercise. I wish we had a whiteboard you could draw on too, but feel free to express yourself in whatever way you want to interpret this idea of what does success look like here? What does a great economy look like? Rebecca, can I start with you on that one? You spend your professional work really forecasting this. How do you think about those metrics or what that vision of success is?
I'll start with sort of the economic tapestry. I think that I would boil it down to maybe two key factors. I'm definitely curious to hear what Josh thinks. One would be sort of economic diversity. I think over time we've found that over-reliance on any one sector, while in sometimes that can be really great, it also creates points of risk for a city over the long term. So having lots of different sectors that drive growth in a region can be really, really beneficial over time. But that diversity doesn't just have to come in the industrial basin. It can also come through in diversity across income classes as well. I think that having representation and roles and ability to have in our communities people of all income groups and backgrounds is really important. So you can think of that as maybe an inclusive economy is one that would help to facilitate a great economy as well. And you hear even the Fed talk about things like that. How does that look in the built environment? Well, I would say two things. One is an accessible city, right? Something that you can access easily. We know that impediments to access create barriers that do have economic distortions and or externalities, and also affordability. Which is obviously a tremendous challenge across the country right now, and is definitely weighing on the ability of great cities to thrive even more than they are at this time.
Yeah, and again, I just want to pull in the chat. I'm seeing those same questions about like an economy is one that works for all the different types of lives. I don't, again, there's some subtlety there of like different economies in there or just different ways the economy works for different income levels, different populations. But I think that's a really key point. Again, I'm seeing that reflected in the conversation in Slido. Josh, how do you think about this kind of the question of visioning success?
Sure. So, I mean, if I could take just one moment, James, if you mind, just for those of you on the call that are not familiar with the National League of Cities, we've been up and running for about 100 years, a little over 100 years now. And we have approximately a little over 2,700 active members, and we represent about the 19,000 cities, towns, and villages around the country. And part of our longstanding research efforts have really gone to track the underlying state of the cities that we do every year and have done for many years, where we analyze the priorities that the mayors across the country are offering to their residents in their State of the Cities reports. And so, to answer your question, I think a few things. Oftentimes, it's about supply of housing, supply of jobs, supply of amenities, the public services that are offered to residents, the private services that are offered through the private sector, and by way of housing that meets the needs of the range of residents. And we talk a lot about both single family homes and multi-unit developments. Specifically regarding the fun economy, we also need to have housing that provides housing to those that are working in the fun economy. So I think that's one of the key points when we're focusing on what a ideal economy looks like for a city, town, or village. I would also, just to reiterate what Rebecca said, a blend of sectors and industries enables the local economy to be robust in as many economic environments as they may face, and also high quality relationships between the private sector, the local governments, their university and higher education partners, the private sector community. All of that works well in tandem, and that underpins the great economy that many jurisdictions are currently managing.
That's great. Yeah, appreciate that context. You guys are doing incredible work. I want to pull out one of the comments here I really like in the chat. Abraham Diallo said, and forgive me if I got the pronunciation wrong, where anyone can be who they want to be when they want to be. So this view of the economy as an enabler, right? As from a personal perspective, being able to live that life you want, and an economy that empowers and enables you to do it. So really a wonderful diversity of perspectives there. Okay, I need a new catch slogan. Let's clear the chat. We are moving on to our next question here, and this is the meaty one, so we'll spend a minute here. How do we do it? If it was so easy, I'm sure we'd already have it done, but I know this is a challenging one, and it's about the path forward. How do we get to that vision? And I wanted to add in the challenge to try and prioritize that list. So welcome you to brainstorm this, add any of your ideas in Slido. And I'm going to especially ask our experts here to help us kind of prioritize that list of actions, the things that we need to do together to create that economy, that city that we just envisioned together. Rebecca, can I start with you again on this one? Help us chart the work ahead, priorities.
Sure. Maybe I'll give a few ideas, and maybe Josh and I can go back and forth a little bit on this and build off each other. But I think, and he mentioned this in his remarks as well as I did in my last response, which is it's really difficult to think about a great economy without affordable housing. And that is such an incredibly acute issue in all places in this country at this point in time. And so it's really tough to start this list without recognizing that we need to increase the stock of housing across the spectrum at the affordable end, but also what we know is that there are significant filtering effects that happen in rental markets if you do build at the higher end of the market. And so facilitating an expansion of the housing stock for all kinds of housing, not just rental, but also single family detached, accessory dwelling units, things like light touch density, as they've been dubbed. And whether that's through pressure to and sort of partnerships to better streamline permitting, zoning changes, anything that can create an environment with fewer barriers to doing that is going to result in more affordable housing. The more barriers that you have, the tougher it's going to be and the longer it's going to take. And that will have impacts on economic outcomes.
Yeah, I'm glad you started there. That's near and dear to my heart, and I think I just hear that time and time again. We gotta solve that question of affordable living. Josh, do you concur? Do you want to challenge, or what is your thoughts here?
No, I agree, and I think when we look at some of our both most recent research and then research that has come in over the past decade plus, looking at the mixed use development, for example, or brownfields redevelopment. A lot of communities are really prioritizing, especially post-COVID, the importance of green spaces in their communities.
Yeah.
We hear that all the time: green spaces, green spaces, green spaces. Also, sort of a wrapper to all of this is ensuring that your building codes are updated to make sure that the building codes that you have on the books align with the direction you want to go from, in this case, in a fun economy perspective, or in a just a broader, robust economic perspective. I think that those are three or four that immediately pop to mind. And I will say, just more generally about the prioritization piece, there is a lot of great work going on around the country in terms of both elected and appointed officials at the local level proactively reaching out to different segments of the resident base to work with them to prioritize different programs and policies. And it's not just, I don't want to say not just, it's not only sending out surveys, but it's engaging residents in different forums, engaging residents that may be coming from different parts of the community, and really, looking at innovative ways to collect information that ultimately goes into future plans for programs, services, and future development as well.
I know I don't think you're even reading Slido, but there's some beautiful echoes of the comments you all are making and the comments people are making in the chat here. Listen to residents, listen to residents, listen to residents. There's this need to engage. And the other one I want to elevate here, again, my good friend Abraham here has got some great comments. Bring an end to fragmented governance. Everyone needs to be on the same page. And I think of that's a governance question. But I think about that from this multi-sector, and as again, shameless plug here, what we're trying to do with Future Cities is do that coming together of all these different stakeholders. And obviously here you can see how we brought those different sectors together for this conversation. We will continue to do that work over the years to come of this initiative. But I wonder if you each could speak to that a little bit around this this question of how do we help align action? How do we help bring people together on the same page so that this path forward is we're taking action on, we're coordinating on? Welcome either of you to grab the microphone there.
I'll just maybe leave a few thoughts, but I think the ability to connect from grassroots up to maybe a city level can happen in different ways, whether it's through community organizations, organizing to participate in conversations with the local government. My firm, in conjunction with a firm, Places Platform, did research in a report last year called Reimagining Cities, where we looked at business improvement districts and the role that they play, because they really are a fifth level of governance. There's opportunity there. I was actually last fall in Nashville, and the Nashville Civic Center was there, and I point that out because it's such a great example of a best practice. They engage with their community. They're not for profit. They are very involved with imagining the future of what Nashville looks like, and have been for decades. And the residents, I think we earlier heard from someone, listen to the residents. That's what they do. And the residents said, like, we don't want another Music Row. We don't want to go to Music Row. We don't want to go anywhere near it. We want places for us. And they listened to that, and they built environments around that. It's affected the way that they've developed the city. It affects the way that they even alter traffic routes, and even the signage, or the kinds of things that you see at an intersection. I mean, all the way down to that for public safety reasons. So I think that's, just a few little nuggets that maybe provide some perspective.
I just would add on, one of the points I wanted to make sure that I mention is the regional collaboration piece, which you sort of are getting at with your question, James, in terms of how our cities, counties, towns, villages, all coordinating in their region, and ensuring that even the smaller jurisdictions that might be in a larger metro area have a seat at the table, have a voice in the planning of the broader metro area, because all of the actions from the smallest jurisdiction within the metro area to the largest central city, all the actions are in the sum total are what ultimately positions the metro area to thrive in terms of the fun economy, the housing stock, labor supply, across the board. And so we've seen the cities that collaborate the most with their neighboring jurisdictions and the counties in which they exist, really positions them well for future success.
That's great. We're going to move to the next question in a second, but I just want to pull a thread together, because when we talked about visioning the success of the economy, we talked about this personal perspective that you can live the life you want to in that economy. And now that we're talking about how to do it, we're talking about engaging those people and asking them what they want that to look like. So this human-centric view, if you will, or this view from the street, this like way of creating the work, and it is yes, there's something there, and that's definitely got my thoughts flowing. So a lot of other great ideas in the chat as well. And I'm going to move us forward, because the section we're about to get into is all about these specific ideas that we're going to dive into. And this is the lightning round. This is the speed round. This is where we pick up the pace a little bit, last maybe 5 to 7 minutes here. Thank you for clearing the chat. So this is the deep dive, right? We know some of these sections, these levers. Again, you guys all, our audience here is extremely smart. They've already been sharing these ideas, but I want to dive in deeper. So quick round, don't need in Slido for those participating. Appreciate, just shoot out these ideas. This is the brainstorm section. And again, I'm going to just pass it to each of our specialists here on what land use change unlock new economic markets. Welcome rattling off a few, or a prioritized list of the ones you think we need to focus on right now. Josh, you want to start?
Sure. Every community is unique. Let me preface that. So there's no one size fits all approach. But what we're seeing with a lot of our surveys is making sure that there are mixed modes of transportation to get from one side of a jurisdiction to the other, in a car, not in a car, on a bike, and ensuring that things are enabling for folks to get around that way. We talked about this already. Does the housing stock match the needs of the community? Do the skill sets of the residents match the needs of the employers, be it private, public, nonprofit, education, healthcare? And just more generally, I mentioned this earlier, like the development plans, mixed use, brownfields redevelopment. What are the options there for ensuring that the jurisdictions as well positioned as possible to engage in new economic miles?
I'm going to throw a few from the chat in, Rebecca, before I go to you. Adaptive reuse of older, underused office spaces, make this easy to do. Rethinking parking, small commercial retail use, removing single family zoning. So throwing out a few of the chat there. How about you, Rebecca? What would you add to the list or prioritize?
First, I agree with everything I'm hearing. I think building in flexibility because things change. We're in a very dynamic economy. It feels like, things accelerate. We now have AI who knows what that's going to do over the next 10 years to the sort of employment picture that all of our cities face. So I would say building in flexibility and maybe less prescriptive land use regulations and maybe more form-based codes that could adapt and evolve with cities, and that really dovetail nicely with this idea of density, mixed use that I was hearing from Josh and some of the list you rattled off.
Fantastic. All right, next round. We're keeping this one rolling here. Let's clear the chat. So next one is which building and infrastructure upgrades can boost the economy? So we were talking about the planning layer of that. Now we're talking about the things we build on top of it. And we use the word upgrades. I might generalize that even to changes. What do we need to change about our buildings and infrastructure to help boost the economy? Rebecca.
Well, we have tremendous amount of investment we need to put into infrastructure. So you can't go wrong in that realm. And there's just such tremendous economies of scale to building out infrastructure. Just for example, if you're able to better connect through bus, rail, other modes that are not car, you reduce the cost to local households significantly of that. And in fact, so much so that HUD estimates it's actually cheaper housing plus transportation to live in New York City than in Atlanta when you actually put those two costs together. And big difference there is what kind of infrastructure you have. On the building side, I think I'm just going to go with the most obvious because I'm in commercial real estate. We've estimated that there are probably somewhere between 20 and 30% of the office stock that needs to go. Now, very much trying to aim for as many residential conversions as possible. It's not all going to go resi. There are other highest and best value use cases for that real estate in some instances, but that will be a drag on public finances. That's going to be a drag on a block in a neighborhood. And underutilized office will at some point reach a basis where that kind of transition is more viable even than it is today.
Go ahead, Josh. Yeah.
Rebecca hit it spot on. I would just add two other additional points. Consistent telecommunications infrastructure so that regardless of where you are within the jurisdiction, you have access to high quality internet and other communications. And the second piece is when we talk about office conversions, like ensuring that perhaps non-commercial entities have access to those converted office spaces. We hear that a lot from our members. Perhaps repurposing office space for K through 12 educational opportunities or community college opportunities or encore career upskilling nonprofits, these sort of things, so that you not only are helping to continue to develop your future workforce, but also taking advantage of available office stock as well.
That's great. I got to keep us moving here. We got a few more to get through, but I just loved Kevin Chan, your comment on prioritizing regular maintenance of existing structures. It's not just doing changes to it. It's like jobs are created when we just take care of the ones we have. So let's clear the chat. And that is a good segue to the next one on how can cities attract the businesses and talent to create 21st century jobs? Again, we just got like 1 or 2 minutes on each of these as we wrap up here, but jobs, right? The key topic. So again, I'll go Rebecca and then Josh on this one.
It's kind of a chicken and egg problem, right? Do businesses go to where the talent is or vice versa? And my observations in working with thousands of companies is that they make decisions based on where the talent is now, where they think it's going. So I think it's really about how do you attract a population of individuals that meet the needs of the kinds of businesses that you're talking about. And that comes down to, we've talked about it, affordability, but also that experience. We know that younger people do want to be in urban centers. They disproportionately do want to be in cities, not just urban centers, but in cities more generally. That they value this sort of 24-hour activation of those places to get back to the experience economy. And that, I think, is really important. I would kind of just end with one thought, which is that can create a very transactional environment, because we know that, if you're in that kind of 20 to 30 age bracket, you're probably going to move again at some point. So I've been really focused on trying to keep in the conversation, how do you create an attraction for all life stages, for multi-generational households, for households with children, that are actually going to allow them to stay in the cities for their entire life cycle, because that's really where I'm seeing things break down in a way that's increasingly concerning.
That's great. Josh, you're going to have to forgive me. I'm going to give you the next question just so I can keep it moving here. So this financial strategies, right? And thinking about this as not just existing modes, but what are some new modes that we could use? What are public-private partnerships, to tee up one kind of an idea? How do you think about the kind of new ways of financing this?
So, we've talked a lot about infrastructure, and I think we could focus on new all we want, but I think municipal bonds are still core to financing a lot of the infrastructure that ultimately we need to support the future advancement of these cities around the country. I mentioned regional collaboration are the ways of pooling funds to underwrite the metro-wide infrastructure needs to advance the jurisdiction as well. James, you already mentioned P3s. I would also say one other thing that maybe is financial, but also is technological as well, is how are we? We're hearing this a lot from a lot of our members now in terms of can jurisdictions leverage the technical capacity of their perhaps Research One institutions, other state universities, community colleges, for helping to expand the knowledge base and computing capacity of the cities themselves, but also the businesses within the local economy as well.
This is great. Last couple minutes here. I'm going to put up this question. I'm going to go to the next couple slides to help wrap us up together today. But while I'm talking, please continue to use Slido to say, what did you not get to talk about today? What questions did we not get to tackle that our attendees want us to tackle and talk about as a part of the broader Future Cities Initiative? This is the first of many. So with that, let me give you the quick kind of thank you moment here. I have to give deep thank yous to Josh and Rebecca for sharing this expertise, incredible insights. Thank you for your work. I know daily you are out here leading this, helping us do this better. So extremely grateful that you could join us today. We don't have like a round of applause, but I'm sure the attendees will join me in applauding and thanking you for being a part of this. A couple teases coming up next. This is a monthly series, so get it on your calendar. We'll do a follow-up. Come back next month. The first Friday is May 2nd, same time, same place here on Zoom. And we are talking about cities as hubs of innovation. So really thinking about technology, about entrepreneurs, around how do we bring new ideas and solutions to this with that ethos of innovation and creativity that we want to infuse all of this work. And of course, there is more to Future Cities than just Future Fridays. We are doing all kinds of different activations, exhibitions, programs, online content, and we would love to welcome all of you to stay engaged and be a part of that. So there's my email. My colleague Rachel would love to connect with anyone as well. So this is really an initiative that is for everyone, and we hope that you all will continue to participate and be a part of it. So with that, and one more minute to go, again, thank you for joining us as we embark on this work. We truly believe it's exciting, it's important work, and we know that we all have to come together. It's a theme we talked about quite a bit today. We want all of those voices to participate and be aligned as we reimagine the future of cities. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday and a safe and enjoyable weekend, everyone. Thank you for joining us at Future Fridays.